Chapter 23. McAdams drove. Decker sat shotgun while the woman took up the back seat. The car was quiet for the first half hour since business wasn't discussed with Melon in tow. Rena was drifting off. The signs gave Decker a chance to close his eyes and think. A few minutes later, Melon spoke up. Thank you for taking me back. No problem. Rena opened her eyes and stretched. Who wants coffee? I'm off caffeine, Melon told her. Then I guess you won't be drinking coffee. I'm gonna just put this out there, McAdams said. You fellas up here, and it's just not to feel safe. You've got to level with us. What are you after? Marlon crossed her arms in a half. I assume you're talking to me, correct? Maybe this conversation is best held another time, Rena said. No, Tyler's right, Decker said. What's going on, Marlon? Nothing, she insisted. Silence, then more silence. She sighed. You said you had Eli's paper looked at? Aha, McAdams said. Now we're getting to the root of all evil. Yes, we had the papers looked at, Decker said. Eli wasn't working on any revolutionary mass. How do you know that? Mellon asked. I don't know, McAdams said, but the guy at Harvard does. He told us the mass was simple. Maybe he's lying. Decker said, why would he do that? Oh, rubbish, Mellon said. I'm just going to put it all out there since you put it all out there, okay? That would be refreshing, McAdams said. Ha ha ha, Mellon paused. The papers that have to do with Dr. Belford, I'm not interested, okay? I know all about them, and you know all about them, or at least you know what she was doing because Damador told you. Is he leveling with us? Decker asked. Yeah, he is as far as I know. Could he have also been doing something for her? Sure, we're not close. He doesn't trust me, and I don't trust him. At least we both know where we stand, and that's more than I can say for most of the people I know. Decker said, Malin, if you're not interested in Belford's shenanigans, what are you interested in? She exhaled. Before Eli died, he told me that he was doing important research somewhere else. He didn't want anyone to find out about it because he could get into trouble, and also the professor into trouble. Which professor? He didn't say. So he never mentioned Linus Tovard, Decker said. Oh, so you know. Apparently we do, and some faculty members know as well. Oh, okay. He swore me to secrecy. What was the research about? I don't know. Mal? Honestly, I don't know. I'm sure it had to do with Eugen values and Eugen vectors and Fourier analysis, which is what he was studying. Anyway, he told me he wanted me to take over his research if something happened to him. Her eyes suddenly watered. I asked him what could possibly happen to him, what he was worried about, and he told me everything was fine. But this was just in case because he trusted me with this stuff. I had no idea he was thinking about suicide. If I knew, I would have said something. He was never an emotional guy, but certainly he didn't seem upset or depressed. It was just an odd conversation. He brought it up once and he never mentioned it again. When was that? McAdams asked. About 3 months ago. Decker said, and you never thought to tell us about this conversation. He wanted to keep it private, and I was trying to honor his request, especially since I wasn't sure how he died. Then this all happened with Professor Belfort. I thought everything might be related, which is why you should have told us, McAdams replied. Malin, do you think Eli's death and Katrina's murder are related? Decker asked. How should I know? That's your job, right? You're a smart lady. I'm just interested in your thoughts. She was quiet. Then she said, I don't know, maybe the timing was a coincidence, but it's a weird one. If it is, right? Decker nodded right. All I'm saying is if you have Eli's personal research papers, he would have wanted me to have them. Do you have his papers? I have some papers that he had stashed with his brother, Decker said, and you can't tell the context of the research from the math. Are you going to ask Talbot about it? That was my next step. He won't admit working with Eli, Mellon said. It's tantamount to admitting he stole Dr. Rose's student. If you just let me take a look at the papers, there must be something I can figure out. And he thought I could assume the mantle of his work. I would be happy to honor him. Why should his brilliance go to waste? This is the deal, Mellon, Decker said. Until we figure out what's happened with Dr. Belfort, and we're absolutely positive that Elijah's suicide isn't related to her death, we cannot show you anything. Maybe once the crimes are completely resolved, we can talk about giving you the papers. Fine. Mellon crossed her arms again. This is so frustrating. Well, as long as you're in here, in the backseat of my car, how about you tell us everything you knew about Dr. Belfort's operation? I told you everything. She was using a stochastic oscillator for market momentum. I have no idea what algorithm she was using. If you have her computer, you could probably find out. I'm sure everything is in there. Decker thought about her words. If someone was after Belford's algorithm, why not just steal the computer when she wasn't home? As he mulled that over, he thought maybe Belford, like Malin, always had her computer with her. In that case, if someone had wanted it, he or she would have to break into her house during the night when she was in bed sleeping and swipe the computer without waking her up. Maybe she caught the thief in the act and there was a confrontation and he pushed her. Peter, Malin is talking to you, Rena said. Sorry, what are you saying? I'm just saying, even if the algorithm is on her computer, you probably wouldn't have any idea how to differentiate it from all her other math. No, probably not. I can help you, you know. I could be like an expert witness or whatever. Decker smiled. Thank you for your generous offer. And maybe we'll take you up on it, but not now. She threw up her hands. Just remember when this is over, Eli's paper belongs to me. Julie noted. No one spoke. The rest of the ride home was mercifully silent. Home sweet home, except it was freezing. Rena took off her cashmere tam and laid it on the entry hall table, but kept her jacket on until it warmed up inside. Did you turn down the heat? Have you seen our oil bill? When Rena didn't answer, Dick said, Mia Cooper, I apologize. Just for that, I'm not cooking, she announced. You don't need an excuse not to cook. I know that, but this is a convenient one. I'm too tired. So either we're going out to eat or we're getting takeout. And I don't want meat. I just had to leave for lunch. Tika said, if you don't want meat, how about Falafel King? It's meat. I'll get a shawarma. You can get a falafel. How about vegan paradise? I'd rather go to Falafel King. I don't want a falafel. Okay, how about this, Decker said. I'll go to Simon's and get a brisket sandwich for myself and get you whatever you want at Vegan Paradise. Fine, I'll have a vegan taco plate and a minestrone soup. Rena was beginning to warm up. It put her in a better mood. You don't mind making 2 stops? No, not a problem, my love. What about you, Tyler? A brisket sandwich sounds good. Rena said, I'll throw out and open a good bottle of wine. Sounds like a plan. Decker slipped on gloves, a scarf, and a hat. I've been in the car all day. I'm going to walk. 40 minutes later, Decker rewarmed the food, and within 5 minutes, everyone was eating. Tyler had started a fire in the hearth, and with the heat turned up, the house had turned pleasant. A gentle snow was falling on the ground. It was perfect time to stay indoors and read a book in a comfy chair while sipping on an extra glass of wine. Rena said, Are you 2 done for the night? Decker checked his watch. It was 7. Well, no one's called with any news updates, so I guess the answer is yes. I got a bunch of syllabi today, Adam said. I'm going to read them over and see what I need to concentrate on. What's on the agenda tomorrow, Peter? First, I want to see if the tech got anywhere with Dr. Belford's computer. I'd also like to meet with Talbot, find out what Eli was doing. Do you think the research had anything to do with his suicide? Beats me, Decker said, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to flesh him with a little. Speaking of an enigma, if there's nothing new on Belford, I want to go to Manhattan and visit Katrina's brothers on Sunday. Did you say Manhattan? Rena said. Yes, you can call the kids dinner, whatever you and the kids want. I'll have all Saturday to study. McAdam said, I'll hitch a ride with you guys. While you're out to dinner with the family, I'll study at my step-grandmother's house. You can come to dinner, Rena said. That's okay, Nina's not home and it'll be quiet. Where is she? Staycation in Rhodes at her villa. Lucky her, Decker said. And you have the key to the Parker Avenue apartment? I have many keys, Bossy grinned, and a few have even opened some doors. Chapter 24. Slapping on aftershave, Decker realized that he hadn't changed his look for 50 years, but this year he had hit it right because mustaches, especially thick ones like his, had come back in style. Everything cycled. All you had to do was stick around long enough. McAdams and Rena were already at the dining room table, drinking coffee and nibbling whole wheat toast. Rena was reading the paper while McAdams had his nose in a book. She looked up when Decker came in. Good morning. Good morning. Decker went into the kitchen, poured himself a big mug of steaming coffee and sat down at the table. He took a slice of toast. How are you? I'm great. We're having company for Shabbat tonight. 5 students, and you met all of them. Tomorrow I'll just be us. Which students? Hannah, Ben, Jeanette, Mike, and Lenny. A congenial group. I look forward to it. Am I invited? McAdams asked. You are, if you behave yourself. Decker checked his phone messages. Still nothing regarding Belford's computer. He think they could have hacked into it by now? Maybe old Belfort had everything encrypted and then encrypted again. She is a maths professor. McAdams put down his book. Linus Tavers said he can meet us today at 8 at his office. I left him a message that we'll be there. Is at 8 in the morning, hence I am up and ready. Decker looked at his watch. The appointment was in 40 minutes, enough time to finish a cup of coffee. He took the front section of the Wall Street Journal. As usual, the world was a mess. It was easier for him to deal with true criminals, although one might argue that politicians and felons were one and the same. At least with the bad guys, he knew exactly where they stood. He skimmed the paper until it was time to leave. And 20 minutes later, he and McAdams were out the door, trekking through drifts with snow crunching under their feet. It was a frigid 10-minute walk to New Loft, and it took another 5 minutes to find Talbot's office. His secretary was a student, probably on work study, and this was his assignment. He said, Dr. Talbot is expecting you, so you can go right in. Thank you, Decker said. He and McAdams walked into the spacious office. Talbot got up from his desk and extended his hand. Dennis Talbot, sorry it took so long to connect. No problem, Decker shook his hand. The man was tall and thin with an aquiline nose, deep brown eyes, dark kinky hair, and matcha skin. Decker recognized the look instantly because he had seen it 1,000 times on his son-in-law Kobe, as well as his twin grandsons, who resembled their father. The boys were lighter in skin tone and had looser curls, making them look more Israeli than Ethiopian. Thank you for seeing us. Please have a seat. Talbot sat back down and clasped his hand. How can I help you? I assume it has something to do with this terrible business with Dr. Belfort. We are investigating her death, yes. What can you tell us about her? Nothing really. We knew each other, of course. It's a small school, but I didn't have much to do with her socially or academically. Just the occasional hi in the hallways, in the libraries, and at the annual Christmas party. Okay, Decker took out his notebook. So you wouldn't have any occasion to call her up recently? No, I don't think I've ever called her, period. So you were just colleagues, and that's it, just colleagues. What about students? Are you involved academically with any of them? You mean as an advisor? Talbot made a face. No, I don't even know who her students are. Malin Euler, Damador Batra, and Ari Wiesberg. I know the students. Malin was in my class in electromagnetism and wave theory. Batra and Wiesberg took that class, and another one, particle physics. I want to say, but they were math majors. They have to take some physics class to meet their requirements. What about Elijah Wolf? Decker said. Did he ever take any of your classes? Okay, I know where this is going. Talbot leaned forward. If you want to talk about Elijah Wolf, we can talk about Elijah Wolf. His advisor was always Theo Rosser in the math department, and that's the truth despite what you may have heard. Whether we heard is that you were working with Eli without Dr. Rose's consent. I did not steal Eli from Theo. I had no intention of stealing him from Theo. I know gossip said otherwise, but it wasn't true. I thought of actually talking to Theo directly about the rumors, but then the poor kid died and he just seemed so stupid and petty. So you weren't working with Eli on the sly, Decker said. Had to be on the sly because Theo wouldn't have tolerated it otherwise. So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I suppose I could have refused to deal with him. Talbot rolled his eyes. College is a place to inspire academic curiosity, not suppress it. For God's sake. Why don't you just start at the beginning? Decker said. It's easier that way. Talbot rolled his eyes again. He came to me about a year ago. He had some thoughts that coincided more with my research than with Theo's expertise. He wanted to change advisors. He thought Theo was stifling his creativity, but I told him that because he was an upper division student, it was too late. It wouldn't do to take him on. Besides, I knew the flack that Theo gave Katrina when Eli first suggested a switch. I didn't want any drama. I paused, but I didn't want to stifle him either. He was a brilliant boy. I told him that if he had interests that he wanted to pursue outside his thesis and he thought I could help him, I'd be happy to share what I knew. But I did tell him it was probably better to keep it between us. Of course, I knew it would come out eventually, but I thought if Theo knew that I wasn't interested with Eli's thesis, he wouldn't care, silly me. What happened? Well, Eli died for one thing. Right afterwards, the body wasn't in the ground. Rosa starts demanding that I give him Eli's research. I pretended I didn't know what he was talking about, just for spite. He doesn't believe me, of course. Does he own Eli's research, or do you? McAdams asked. That's a good question. I'm not in possession of most of his papers, but I do know what he was working on. Want to tell us about it? Decker said. Not particularly. McAdams said, the course book has you teaching 2 classes this year, particle physics and electromagnetism and wave theory, and your field is cosmology, right? I'm assuming you're wondering why Eli thought his interest might benefit from my expertise. Eli was studying fear analysis and Eugen vectors, Decker said. Do you know what an Eugen vector is? Decker page 3 notes. It's a subset of vectors that changes its direction when it's stretched. You've done your homework. It was explained to us several times, including yesterday, by a Harvard math professor. Decker said, Eli's research may be relevant to both investigations. I'm not Theoresia. I don't want drama either, but we'll both get in unless you come forward. What was Eli interested in? I suppose it's the right thing to do to tell you. Eli was mapping space junk. The room fell silent. Then Decker said, okay, I'll bite. What is space junk? Just what it is, just floating around in space. Old satellites, spent rocket stage, and a lot of fragments from collisions and disintegration in the cosmos. The official name is disambiguation. Most of the material is very small, but that doesn't mean it can't cause problems with current satellites and other operable space vehicles. Even paint dust and paint flakes are dangerous if they collide with something solid at the speed that you do within space. How much space junk is there? McAdams asked. A lot. For instance, just recently the Chinese government thought it would be fun to fire an anti-satellite missile from Earth at one of its old weather satellite, exploding thousands of shards in that already crowded lane, exposing the entire geostationary orbit region to Kessler syndrome. It really is a legitimate problem. And my next question is, Decker said, what is Kessler syndrome? It's also called collision cascading, which tells you what it is. Did you see the movie Gravity? It comes out maybe 4 or 5 years ago. George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, McAdams said. Aha, I get it. The space vehicle they were working on got whacked with some kind of floating debris, and that caused all sorts of problems. Exactly, Tova said. The theory is that a single collision could form debris, which in turn could cause another collision, which in turn causes more debris, etc., until the lower outer space is completely destroyed, along with all operable satellites within. That will completely destroy technologies we know it today, not to mention the possibility of debris colliding with Earth and possibly throwing it off axis. A real gloom and doom scenario, Decker said. Yes, I know, it makes good science fiction, but it really is a problem because lower outer space is only going to get busier and busier. The world needs more bandwidth, and huge tech companies like Google and Facebook want it before anyone else. Currently, Google is launching high-altitude balloons 12 miles high up in the stratosphere to increase its bandwidth. But as you can imagine, balloons have their issues. For one thing, you need a lot of balloons to cover the Earth properly. Plus, balloons are less stable and more fragile than geostationary satellite. Satellite orbit much higher in space, 22,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. They're bigger and more powerful, and you only need about 3 or 4 of them to get all the coverage you want. But satellites cost exponentially more than balloons. If you're going to go about investing billions in a satellite, you might want to know that crap is floating around and where it is, so your very expensive machine doesn't get whacked to smithereens. Okay, Decker said. So Eli was trying to map all this debris. He was trying to create a prototype on how to map the orbits. Yes, it's a nascent field, but the implications are tremendous. McAdams said, and potentially highly profitable. Potentially, yes. I don't think Eli cared about that. He was just excited to do something original with Eugen vectors, although they've been used for decades as coordinates in space. How do you map debris if it's changing location all the time? That's why I said map the orbit. How would you map the orbit of a paint flake? McAdams asked. You bounce waves off it, opposite. Your FM radio, for instance, it gives off very rogue waves that have the capacity to bounce off objects in space. If you have the capacity to pick up the waves with a specialized dish, for example, let's say an FM dish, you can map the item by the deflection. Even a paint flake weighs more than a radio wave detective. Eli had begun working on his own mapping system, using Fourier analysis to break down the complex waves to see where they were coming from, and using Eugen vectors as his coordinates in space. He's been working on it for over a year, and then Tolver threw up his hands. Just terrible. You've been working with him for over a year, Dick asked. On and off, yes. Did you notice any change in him these past months? The room went quiet. Tolv said he was depressed. He wasn't depressed or anything like that. If anything, he seemed a little more engaged. I had assumed it was because he was so excited about what he was doing, but at times he also seemed distracted, like he couldn't quite concentrate. At one point, I thought he might be burning out. That's always a possibility. Students get this initial rush, but then get bogged down in the nitty-gritty of calculations. I asked him if maybe he wanted to take a break for a while to finish up his thesis with Rosa, but he said his thesis was done and he insisted he was fine, but obviously he wasn't fine. The professor shook his head. In hindsight, I should have pressed him about it, but I didn't want to pry into his personal life. I should have, from my own anecdotal evidence, I found that students have two peak periods for suicide: when they enter and right before they leave. This is panic, job panic, life panic. Decker said, from what I've learned, it didn't seem to me that Eli was panicking over anything. Something must have been bothering him. I feel terribly guilty. I should have been a little more directive. Decker said, you know that people who are determined to commit suicide will do it no matter what the obstacles are. Nice thing to say, but I just wish I knew what was distracting him. McAdam said, did you know that he was also working with Katrina Belford? No. Talbot looked perplexed. No, I didn't. What was he doing with her? She was doing some outside consulting with some financial companies, Decker said. Eli was helping her with some calculations. Really? He shrugged. I had no idea. No wonder Eli was distracted. His mind must have been pulled in many directions, he smiled. My God, that must have been ruffled Rose's feathers. It was bad enough that Eli wanted to work with me. At least I'm not in the maths department. Belfort was. It might have irked him if he knew about it. Yes, that makes sense. I paused. Outside work is frowned upon in the maths department. McKenna said, not so in physics. People can take outside work if the department head allows it. And he usually does. He understands about the paltry salaries of academics and economic necessities. I have several consulting jobs. Of course, it's easier with me because I have tenure. He paused. Do you think that Belford's death and Eli's death are related to the work he was doing with her? We're working on all kind of theories. Decker said. Talbot looked at the clock. I do have a class to catch in 20 minutes. I understand, Decker stood. Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us. I hope I've helped you. You can feel free to call me anytime you think of anything else. You have, and I will, Decker said. Talbot smiled. You know, you're one of the few people I've met who hasn't asked me about my name. What they're obviously asking about is the disconnect between my name and my race. Scandinavian name and European face. Decker said, my son-in-law is Ethiopian. They have distinct features. Yes, we do. So ask me the question. How'd you get a Scandinavian name? My biological parents were farmers. They died during a famine, along with a great deal of my biological relatives. My older brother and I were placed in orphanage and adopted out to a wonderful Swedish family who didn't have children of their own. Both my adopted parents were scientists. My brother is a chemical engineer. I'm a physicist. My biological parents were illiterate. So what does that say about the nature, nurture, and genetics? Decker said to me, he says that if your biological parents had been raised in the same environment as your adopted parents, they might have been scientists too. Of course, Toller said. I suppose I'm saying that I am who I am because of both sets of parents. A fluke of the right set of circumstances coming together at the right time. What does your son-in-law do? He's a neonatal nurse who went back to medical school. We're bright people, Ethiopians. I still think of myself as Ethiopian. It smacks me in the face every time I look in the mirror, but I'm eternally grateful for my Swedish parents for one thing. They gave me a real cool name. Thank you for listening.